Good evening, everybody. I need to start with two apologies. First of all, I'm sorry I can't be with you this evening, but next week is Strasbourg week, and I need to be there early on Monday, so I'll actually have left Ireland by the time this meeting starts. The second thing is I'm afraid I'm suffering from some kind of recurring laryngitis, so my voice is not great at the moment, but hopefully you will be able to follow what I'm saying to you. You're meeting this evening to discuss Ceta, the Canadian trade deal. One of the things I have noticed in the debate up to now is that on one side you have those who support the deal saying it's brilliant, it's everything we could have ever wanted, it will bring jobs, it will bring prosperity, etc. And then on the other side, you have people saying, absolutely not, it's the worst possible trade deal, we need to get rid of it, and we need to get rid of it now. For me personally, I won't say necessarily in the middle, but I have a slightly more nuanced view of it. There's good and bad in Ceta. When I'm finished sort of going through my views, I'll tell you, which side I come down on. What's good? Well, if we're going to have a trade deal, if we're going to try and set up regulatory rules and systems for trade, it's actually better that Europe leads that rather than perhaps China or the US. Perhaps we're being presumptuous to say that, but I believe that. I believe that if Europe is to the forefront, that we end up with higher standards, whether it comes to labour standards, environmental standards, whatever. So I think that's an important thing to say at the beginning. Equally, if you look at a country like Ireland, we know that trade is a lifeblood. Without trade, we wouldn't exist. So I think we accept the basic premise that we need to trade and that we need to set high standards for trading. So I suppose the question then becomes, does Ceta deliver on that? Does it deliver on it in such a way that one could support it? Well, let me deal with just a couple of points. I'm going to be quite brief, but nonetheless, I'd like to deal with a few points. First of all, this, we're told there'll be plenty of jobs from Ceta. There are different models for extrapolating what happens from a trade deal. The European Commission used what they call the computable general model, which has serious flaws in that it assumes full employment and it doesn't look at the distribution of income or wealth. But the truth is, any model will have serious flaws. But even with that model, the gains, as far as jobs are concerned, and growth in GDP, they're quite modest. There are other studies, the Tufts study, for example, which shows job losses. So I think in this argument, there's no such thing as right and wrong because we're all speculating. But I think it's reasonable to say that we cannot really expect any significant increase in employment from Ceta, even with the Commission's own model. It's modest. And there are several others, UN models, etc., which suggest that there in fact could be job losses. I suppose for me, the two issues that are core to Ceta are what we call negative listing and secondly, ICS or ISDS. But just before I come to that, I just want to make one other comment. Ceta is a lot more than a trade deal. It's not just about tariffs. I think if it were, there probably wouldn't be a major issue. Already, many of the tariffs are quite low, but Ceta, of course, would decrease them significantly because some are still high. But it's about much more. It's about regulatory cooperation. It's about setting standards as far as labour is concerned, as far as the environment is concerned. And it's about liberalisation. So that's why there's such a debate around Ceta. It's not just about selling a product from A to B, it's about a lot more. And coming to that last point about liberalisation, I mentioned two major issues for me, and one of them is what we call negative listing. Now, in the trade deals that the EU has been dealing with up to now, we've had something called positive listing. What that means is this, that there is a list, a specific list of sectors that can be liberalised. So it's a positive list. If it's on the list, it can be liberalised, and we could be talking about anything here. But if it's on the list, it can be liberalised. If it's not, it can't. However, negative listing is different, because negative listing, and that's what we have in Ceta, says that only those sectors which are listed are exempted from liberalisation. So what that means is everything else is included. That's significantly different from two perspectives. Number one, literally, governments who will decide on this might just miss something. And it's easy to miss something. And secondly, if you look at the next 5-10 years, there will be many new sectors, etc., that we don't even know about now, especially in the area of digitalisation. And they will automatically be included. So we're signing a blank cheque here to some extent, which will tie the hands of governments, whether you're conservative or you're socialist or you're liberal or whatever you are. It will tie the hands of governments down the line. So I object to that. To me, this is liberalism on steroids, and I believe that down the line, a number of member states will look at this, especially if they don't have liberal governments, and ask, how did this happen? Well, it's happening now. But the other point, and I know you'll discuss it at length, so I'll be brief about it, is about what we call ISDS, or what's now called ICS. That's the Investor-State Dispute Settlement. There's lots of things I could say, and I know we'll discuss it at length. But to me, it's the very premise of it that's unacceptable. The fact that we set up special courts, not answerable to the Irish High Court or the Irish Supreme Court or even the European Court of Justice, not answerable to anybody except themselves. So we set up these courts specifically for investors, not for workers, not for citizens, for investors, to protect their investment. To be fair to the Commissioner, she has made real efforts to improve the process, and I have to give her that. But that's not the point. The point is, we already have well-developed legal systems in Europe and in Canada. We don't need special courts. In fact, the President of the Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, said that at the very beginning of his term here. We don't need special courts for investors, yet they are stitched into this trade deal. There will be scaremongering about it. You know, it's not just that an investor can sue a state without reason. There has to be reason. But even if they have reason, they should go to an ordinary court. They should not go to a special court. And I just want to finish up by saying that last weekend I spoke with some colleagues from Leitrim who have, through the Irish Parliament, managed to score a notable success on the issue of fracking. And now their concerns is, if the Ceta deal goes through, can a company take Ireland to court because we don't allow fracking? We need to look to the future when we are signing something as comprehensive and far-reaching as Ceta. It does not have sufficient protections, and therefore, while there's good and there's bad, I could not support Ceta as it is, and I will not.